I just interviewed Nick. Last month, he made $400,000 using AI automations all by himself, no employees. And here's exactly how he did it.
405,000. 30 calendar days or so, yeah. 335,000 were from my 2 communities.
But what's crazy is he started by sending custom Loom videos on a platform that most gurus would tell you to avoid, and he got his first paying client within 4 hours.
You're doing 20 to 25 of these little Loom videos a day. That's 20 to 25 opportunities to articulate the benefits of your service and to apply them to a particular problem. Quickest win was within, I think, 4 hours of starting. That's pretty sick.
He now uses the same repeatable 4-phase framework and has helped thousands of people in his community, many of which started from zero and made over 10K a month and hit 10K MRR in less than 90 days.
I'd use Instantly for cold email. I'd use Loom for videos. I'd use ClickUp for CRM and project management. I'd use to glue all that together.
In this video, you'll get Nick's exact 4-phase framework for scaling from $0 to $400,000 a month, his favorite AI tools and tech stack for automations, and how to get your first client in hours using his proven method. Let's dive in. All right, Nick, let's jump right in. How much money did you make last month?
405,000.
And what's the rough breakdown of that?
335,000 were from my 2 communities, Maker School, Make Money with Make, and the remaining 70,000 was from my agency and then a sponsorship deal that I've recently worked out.
And how big is your team to support that number at this point?
So the communities are pretty interesting because they're just me. Well, I have a bunch of people now in the community that have taken it upon themselves to do things like respond to questions and whatnot. They're not formally part of my team. I think they've just gotten inspired by the culture of showing up every day, constant engagement and stuff like that, which obviously takes a big load off. And then I have a partner for the agency and for the sponsorship stuff as well. So the 335,000, that is solo. And then the other 70,000 is me, a partner, and then they may be doing an agency with the sponsorship side of things. I'm not entirely sure exactly what direction they're going to go with there, but I work primarily through one partner there.
And like roughly, what are your margins on this business?
Oh, the community stuff is unfreaking believable. Yeah, 97%. I mean, it's literally everything except for the payment processor fees, which are 2.9. It's just passed through on school. Agency is 70. It's tough for me to say right now off the top of my head, but it's going to be 70 something percent.
You're also in the content game. You've done the extra work to look back at your journey and to synthesize like key patterns and different phases. Can you just walk through the key phases of your business journey, starting from like phase 1? I think you called it like front-loading client acquisition.
Yeah, definitely. I really just looked back at the patterns of what made me successful, relatively successful in a business sense. And I came up with this sort of looking back. I've come to the conclusion that there are 4 main phases. The first is to front-load client acquisition. The whole idea is to just get clients as soon as humanly possible, because without clients, you don't have any sort of business. So back when I was going door to door, part of the door to door business is you do just front load client acquisition, right? You have nothing without client acquisition, and it's about as straight line of path as humanly possible to acquiring them. Without clients, you don't have a business. So the first thing you should do in any business is just get clients. You should not work on the skills. You should not try and become a master of your craft. You should not try and build the most beautiful, amazing funnel or beautiful, incredible website. You should literally just focus on getting clients as quickly as humanly possible. And the only thing that you actually build in your business, the only business you have, is the scaffolding necessary to get somebody to actually pay you money. So there are a variety of reasons for that. The simplest and straightest line path, the most powerful one, the one that I always cite in Maker School anyway, is because if you don't land a client for something, then you don't believe it. And the most important thing in any business when you are a total newbie is you need to believe it. And it doesn't matter how many people on YouTube, gurus and whatnot, like myself, try and tell you, hey, you can make money. This is a fantastic money-making opportunity. You're not actually going to internalize it until you go and you make a little bit of money with the business model. So that's really the most important thing that you have to do. And then the second that you do that, you now have belief, and then you have a real business. And then you can start doing things like paying down a bunch of debt that you didn't even really realize that you'd accrued. Basically every part of your business. I just refer to debt as what you don't know that you don't know. It's like the dark matter of the business universe. So it's stuff, client management debt. As a newbie, you don't realize exactly how to manage a client. And so there is debt that is weighing you down at every given moment. If you don't pay down that debt as quickly as humanly possible, money debt, client management debt will accrue a ton of interest, and it will take you longer and longer and longer to pay that off. Yeah, there's client management debt. There's a lot of technical debt. Obviously, now that we've got that first client, you do need to know how to deliver a service. If not, why the hell are you selling it? So, in order to deliver any high quality service, there are going to be some technical implementation details. In my case, it's AI automation related. You got to know APIs, you got to know webhooks and whatnot. But regardless of the service, if you're running a marketing agency, like there's technical steps to that too, right? Like figuring out the copy framework, figuring out the offer and the positioning, figuring out the packaging if you're running some inbound funnel. So the actual skill and technical debt is really important too.
You've changed my mind on what I think about Upwork. I want you to share more about your thoughts on Upwork and the preconceived notions, at least in my head, were like, it's hard to hire people there sometimes. It's also hard to get hired because those aren't the right clients that you want, but you have found an alternative path. Can you share more on that?
Yeah, it's heavily related to this idea of debt. So one big type of debt that you don't know is sales. And so you lack sales skills as a newbie because it is unreasonable to assume that you'd be good at sales if you've never really done it before, obviously. So just getting that out of the way. If you get to a point where you can sell somebody, you have now achieved that minimum activation energy. And from there, you can build out whatever lead acquisition funnel you want. But at the start line, before you've done so, you need to make the amount of energy required to get that first sale as low as humanly possible. My thoughts on platforms like Upwork. And I mention Upwork a lot because it's worked well for me, much better than other ones. But there are a lot of people out there that are printing with a bunch of other ones like Fiverr, Freelancer, and so on and so forth. The idea behind these platforms is they are providing a service. The service they're providing is they are corralling thousands of potential people into a filtered list of clients that are looking specifically for projects that they scope. And these people have money in their hands and they're willing to pay for it. So that's the service that's being provided. And because they are doing all of that work up front, they are validating that the person has a problem. They are having them articulate the solution that they're looking for. They're having them actually state how much money they're willing to pay for that thing. That makes the amount of energy required to overcome that initial sales hurdle much, much lower.
And just starting out, did you have just one niche where you're like, oh, this is very obvious. Here's my niche. Here's where I'm going to double, triple down?
No, I did not. I had multiple niches. And the reason why is because you just get free leverage. So a lot of people think that you need to double down, triple down, just pick one thing and just get really good at it. And I understand the sentiment, and I think that that's true in other areas. But at least when you're at the start line of a business, you know how earlier we talked about debt, right? Client management debt, skill debt, and so on and so forth. Another type of debt is niche debt. You just don't know anything about the niches. And so if you were to try and double or triple down at this very preliminary stage, the probability of you making an existential mistake is pretty dang high. And if you make an existential mistake on day one, that mistake might cost you a few weeks or months of the most critical period of your business where you need to see results or you're not going to continue doing it, right? Instead, what you do is you just pick multiple. The cool thing with picking, let's say, 3 niches instead of 1 is you get all the perceived benefits through the people that you're talking to in the niche because they think that you just niche down into their niche. Obvious. And then you don't actually have to spend, you don't actually have to do 3 times the work. You do like maybe 1.5 times the work. Why? Because we talked about at the beginning, psychology is really the root of it all. And the same sort of messaging that works for one niche will work for another niche, just needs a little bit of massaging. So you set up all the infrastructure, you set up all the messaging, you set up all the copy, the offer and stuff like that for one niche. You just like duplicate 70, 80% of it to the others.
You have some of the best, I would say, free content on the internet between your videos and the breakdown. And then I think you have a Gumroad page of just all these free templates. And so we could definitely link to that stuff below. But one of the things you have is just a simple Google sheet of this niche discovery exercise. And that's pretty much how you thought of it, right? Where you weren't just, here's my niche, here's 10 or 15 niches I could test out and validate.
Absolutely. Yeah. You basically just pick ones that sound good and that adhere to some fundamental principles. Niches that tend to make more money or willing to pay more money because their problems just tend to be larger in opportunity cost. Niches that are digital tend to be easier to scrape. Why? Because you can just plunk them into platforms that have lead lists that you can pay a little bit of cash for. You don't actually have to hire somebody to go and manually do it or build out some big complicated pipeline. So as long as your niches are in that, I'd be bonus points. If you have some experience in one of those niches and you can say, hey, I've actually worked with somebody in this niche to do X, Y, and Z, obviously you should pick that first. As long as you have those few, yeah, man, the world's your oyster. Just pick something and then spend less time thinking versus doing. Feedback over planning.
Setting yourself apart. I think you did a really good job breaking down how to just use a custom Loom in some of these proposals to walk through. And it has these added benefits of not only you are learning to solve a specific problem, but you're also getting a rep of talking to the camera. How often would you do Looms, or would you advise people to do Looms for pitching to win their first customer?
Yeah, when I was near to the start line, I was doing probably 20 to 25 a day, I would say. And if you think about it, you're doing 20 to 25 of these little Loom videos a day. That's 20 to 25 opportunities to articulate the benefits of your service and to apply them to a particular problem, right? That's pretty sick. Where do you get that sort of training? very, very rare that you will find an opportunity to do that. Now, Loom videos are not without their issues. If you think about it, when you are recording a video, you're not talking to a person, and so you lack a lot of the feedback that you would get with a person. So typically what you need is some sort of coach or some sort of coaching community like mine, where you can do it enough to squeeze out as much value talking in a closet alone with nobody else looking over at you. And then periodically, once every 20, 30, 40, 50, you have somebody look at it and be like, okay, cool, you're on the right track here. I'd make a couple of adjustments and then keep going. If I could just tie a lot of this stuff together, it's just all about leverage, right? So the niche thing, that's an example of leverage. The Loom thing, that's an example of leverage. You just get to kill two birds with one stone with all this. If you sell using a technique that is very low barrier to entry for newbies, they don't suffer from heart palpitations like I used to when I was going door to door and talking to business owners. And then it also allows you to get some reps in. That's leverage, and you should take leverage wherever possible.
Nice. Okay, because I highlight that because it's arguably the hardest part, to go from 0 to 1 and actually get these paying customers. And then you start to enter phase 2, where you're doing all this freelance client work. It's custom. You are learning as you're going, paying down this debt. Can you talk about that phase of your journey?
If we just strip away all the complexity here, if the first step is acquiring a client, what got you here won't get you there. You can get your first few clients through whatever means necessary, throwing whatever at the wall and seeing what sticks, Loom videos and Upwork. But eventually you will run into the limit of that. And so if you're just saying, hey, I'm going to do everything for everybody, who the hell are you? Okay, cool. What's the scope? Okay, cool. I can do it for you. But your projects are always going to be different. And because they're always going to be different, there's very little leverage that you can build. So eventually you are necessarily going to run into a ceiling doing all this stuff yourself and also custom. For me, I was able to squeeze through over $70,000 a month. That was my ceiling. And the reason why is because I built a bunch of systems which improved my ability to do stuff like that. But if you wanted to go further than that, and this is going to depend on your skill, your understanding of technicals, your client management, you are going to need a team of some kind. The key for me was just finding the most scalable business model, I would say. Basically, you run into a revenue ceiling, and then you just naturally see some resistance where it's I can't grow any further. And that takes me to this concept of hiring versus finding more leverage. I think a lot of people, all these business gurus are you got to hire fast or whatever. No, hire slow, fire fast. But they say you need to hire as quickly as humanly possible. The second you find yourself doing something that's not in your circle of competence, you need to hire. And it's I don't really think that's true anymore. I think it's insert current year. Dude, we have talking robots that are smarter than my cat. I think you can do a lot with just you if you just apply those resources really intelligently. I don't think you need to hire. So I've actually championed a new thing, and I tell everybody, don't hire first, hire last. If you find something that's outside of your circle of competence, it's not necessary for you to immediately be okay, I need to delegate this so I can get back to doing anything that works. You should take this as an indication that maybe you shouldn't be doing that thing at all. And maybe there's a way to structure your business in such a way where you can just avoid that. Does that make sense? You are avoiding the hiring intentionally because hiring just solves a symptom, not the actual disease. The disease is your business model. Hiring is the Band-Aid. So rather than just slap a bunch of Band-Aids on things, why don't you just find a way to build a better business model and then find a way to scale further just yourself?
And can you just talk about specifically what were some of the projects you were taking on, and how would you look at it in terms of, all right, this is a big project. I think at one point you look back at all these projects and customers that pay you and all right, what are the patterns here? And then that's the process of synthesizing it into repeatable templates and products, right?
Yeah, tell me about it. Man, we had some wild projects because we were lusting after that short-term revenue. And this is a very common theme that you'll find in any service business that does some sort of bespoke implementation. That's the reason why everybody productizes in hindsight. Yeah, I remember I had this one project that was basically Uber for contract work. It was so silly. We took it on anyway because it was really big, high-ticket stuff, and I just wanted a big win. I wanted to close a $20K deal, but it was a massive pain in my ass. I remember that. And the project was initially scoped, I think, to be 45 days, and I think we were working on it for 6 months. It was just the definition of terrible, where eventually this doesn't really make sense to continue doing, and we ended up having to arrive at some middle ground refund. So we made money initially, and a lot of people do, but yeah, eventually you got to pay the piper. So that happened. And I was like, okay, that's too fundamentally wrong. I shouldn't be taking projects that are 45 days and we shouldn't be blowing them up to 4, 5, 6 months. So something's got to change. So what I did was I looked back and then I identified all the projects that I had done that had been easy, that had been fast, and that had delivered very high hourly rates on my end. Because I charge fixed price, right? If you charge $5,000 for a project and then it takes you 10 hours to do, what's your internal hourly rate for that? It's $500. So I looked for projects that were high on the internal hourly rate side of things and the ones that were easy to sell. I just noticed some patterns. And one big pattern that I noticed was projects that tended to deal with revenue or some sort of lead generation where I was building an AI automation system that helped people get money on the front end, just tended to sell way easier and then tended to take significantly less time on my end to fulfill. Okay, so out of the 30, 40 projects here, these 5 continuously come up as like the best. Maybe I should just do these 5. Why don't I just eliminate the other 25, 35? I'll just do these moving forward. And that was like the first couple of steps towards that third phase of productization, where I just started realizing, I can actually do things better. It was an organic evolution, which I find is really interesting. Like I didn't like at any point in time just like sit down and be like, I need to do this. It was just like, well, I want to move in the direction of less resistance, I guess. And so that's what I ended up doing. So now I recommend people follow these 3 steps, and we can chat about the 4th one in a moment. But you get that first client as quickly as humanly possible, right? By whatever means. This is going to come with some problems. You're going to end up doing a bunch of custom work. And that custom work is probably not going to be the most scalable, but you're going to pay down a ton of debt. You're going to earn while you learn. Once you've done that, you're naturally going to hit some sort of ceiling. Once you've hit that ceiling, now you need to start finding leverage through productization. So you go through all the shitty custom projects that you've done in the past. Then you find the ones that have the highest internal hourly rate for your team to fulfill. And then you just eliminate everything except for maybe the top 2 or 3 projects. And then you productize the hell out of those 2 or 3.
Amazing. In knowing what you know today, if you were to just go straight for these productized offerings, any off the top of your head that you would go for first?
Yeah, cold email is big. Cold email is huge. And the reason why is similar to my rationale about Upwork. Just because the cost per acquisitions tended to be super small. And then average order value really depends on what you're selling. But the math works out really, really well. You know how earlier I was talking about the things that help people make revenue tend to sell better and then give me more money? I've just found that to be the one shared factor in all systems that I sell now. And it's actually part of the reason why I started Maker School. Just because I found that, when I solve problems that are related to revenue, well, think about it. Revenue is top line, right? And then your profit is bottom line. So it's like most companies that I'll work with have margins between 20 to maybe 40% or so. So let's say 30%. That means that I get 3 times the perceived value helping somebody solve a revenue benefit as opposed to an income or a profit benefit, right? So it's like, well, I could just do that and then I could demand 3 times more for my services. Or I could demand the same amount for my services, but it might be 3 times easier to sell. So I just focus on revenue problems. So yeah, cold email, that's really big. That's for outbound though. If you want inbound, speed to lead based systems, you familiar with speed to lead? To make a long story short, if somebody is running some ad system for, let's say you're running an HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning business. You're looking for clients, so you run ads. And when somebody types HVAC in San Francisco, they click on you and then they try and give you a call or they fill out a form or whatever. Well, if you don't respond to that immediately, you know what they do? They just like go to the next thing and then they send a form or they give them a call and then they go to the next thing. So the point is it's first person, a first mover advantage. Person who responds to it gets everything. So a simple speed to lead system is, somebody fills out a form for HVAC services because they click on your ad. You just have AI take all of the stuff that they just added to the form and then paraphrase it. And then, hey, Pete, saw you just filled out XYZ form. Saw you're out in Shaughnessy. That's crazy. I'm planning on being there tomorrow. Can I swing by for a quick quote? Apologies, tried to give you a ring 30 seconds ago. I was just headed out of a garage or something. Boom. Now you have immediately within like 30 seconds given them a hyper custom thing. And then they know that they don't need to keep on looking. So they put the freaking phone away. And now your competitors don't get market share. You get it. And then you also, it's leveraged, right? You're not actually having to spend human time and effort on the front end to deal with it. Yeah, cold email for outbound, speed to lead for inbound. And then anything that helps with sales, I would say. So proposal generation systems can be a pretty big unlock for sales orgs because they just spend a lot of time on silly proposal stuff. And if you can use AI to provide the impression that the entire proposal is customized, you obviously get a ton of leverage there. Same thing with the client onboarding systems, stuff like that. I would say those are probably the big ones.
And so now we're entering phase 4. This is where your business currently is. Can you talk about what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So if we front loaded the client acquisition and then we hit that ceiling, so we naturally started productizing in that third step and then scaling, eventually you run into an upper limit and a ceiling to that as well. And the limit is usually like marketing related. Remember how earlier I talked about how hiring was a band-aid on a deeper problem? Well, the way that I see it is like you could hire a bunch of people to do marketing for you and you could piss a bunch of money away on ads and so on and so forth. But I think content is just the ultimate leverage. If you want to grow even further, because I was feeling some natural resistance as I was scaling. If you wanted to grow even further, you just need to find a way to have more people. You need to find a way to build a larger surface area, essentially. Cold email, you're only ever going to go so far. Upwork, obviously super unscalable. It's only for that 0 to 1. So for me, the natural next step was content. I love content. I really love long form content because it's just conversation, right? Anytime I jump on a call with somebody, yourself included, they're all just like, hey man, what's going on? And so we're just chatting with a friend. The reason why is I may have not met you prior to whatever meeting, but then you have felt you've met me. You've consumed several hours of my content. So the sale is so much easier. So you get the surface area benefits, you get the sale benefits. And then, yeah, man, it's Naval said it best when he said that there were those three forms of leverage, right? Code, media, and then labor.
Again, the way you didn't know YouTube was going to work. Today, it's, oh yeah, he's crushing it on YouTube. He's got this perfect funnel. Can you talk about how you set that up as an experiment? And then where were you had no YouTube channel or following at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had like 100 followers, something like that, because I used to post code tutorials back when I was doing some freelance web dev stuff, just for social proof and whatnot. But yeah, it was another one of those things. I was like, how do I minimize the cost per acquisition? And it was very organic. So I tried like 3 or 4 different things, and I just treated it like an R&D phase. And I was like, well, in order for me to really evaluate the effectiveness of content, I actually do have to give it like a royal try. So I set myself up a goal to, for 30 days, record 30 long form videos. Then I would perform like a retrospective basically at the end of the 30 days, and then evaluate the results of my little experiment. And I was not expecting to get basically any good results whatsoever, to be honest. So I was just like, oh, I'm going to make content about whatever the heck I want. I'm going to use my shitty nascent thumbnail skills to like use a Canva template. And my titles sucked, the packaging sucked, everything sucked. Naturally, when you haven't created content before, you're, what the hell do I talk about, right? So what you end up talking about is just stuff that you've done before, right? So because I ended up picking stuff that just happened to be impressive on the internet, which tended to be like, hey, here's how I made $50,000 last month, which is by nature impressive to a lot of people that want to improve their careers. I started realizing people really like it when I talk about how I made $50,000 last month. Maybe I should talk about that more. Yeah, I recorded 30 videos. They were each maybe like 20 to 40 minutes long. And it was just like how I made a bunch of money and how I built systems and end-to-end walkthroughs with drag and drop screen share tutorials and stuff. At the end of the 30 days, I had, I think, 3,500 followers or something. And I was like, okay, this little experiment is over. I'm going with content.
Yeah, and you've studied this, right? And what I love I was too curious and captivated by watching your YouTube videos to not join the community. So I joined, and I was also studying your flow and your content, and a few sort of things that I've noticed that are repeatable probably for other business owners as well is one, there's a little like hack that you put together of the very first thing somebody sees when they enter your community is everybody else getting their wins. And you found a way to like pin those at the top. Why is that important?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of reasons. Obviously, it improves the perceived value of my community, but the most effective model for behavior change is just putting somebody in the same place as a bunch of other people that are doing that behavior. And so in the case of Maker School, big behavior that everybody wants, the transformation, is they want to get their first customer, right? So if you just show them a bunch of people that are getting their first customers, people that started exactly where they were, it's a lot higher probability that they'll actually achieve the thing too. So the second that somebody comes in, I want a culture of wins. I want to reinforce that positivity. And then I want everybody to be like, oh, I guess it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, I've thought it's a big deal my whole life because the only other people around me have been people that have worked construction, been 9 to 5 their whole lives. Nobody I know works from their laptop, but all you do is you just swap out that with 500 people that are making money with twiddling their thumbs a little bit. And then, yeah, probability of success goes way up. So if anybody here runs a community and is watching this, highly recommend you do the same. Second somebody comes into your community, just show them evidence that other people that have started where they are have achieved the wins that they are trying to achieve. And you will see retention rates go through the roof. You'll see success rates go through the roof. You see your churn plummet. And then obviously goodwill too.
If you were just starting out, what would be a handful of software or AI or just tools for your business?
Here are the tools that I'd recommend if I were at the start line of an AI and automation business. I'd use Instantly for cold email. I'd use Loom for videos. I'd use ClickUp for CRM and project management. I'd use Make.com to glue all that together. And then I'd use PandaDoc to send proposals with attached invoices.
Awesome. And then do you have any favorite books or courses or just resources that you have stumbled upon that have had a huge impact on you in your life?
Definitely. Yeah. Atomic Habits was huge. I'm sure you could tell. A lot of my mindset and philosophy is just ripped one for one from James Clear. So shout out to Mr. Clear for that awesome book. The Goal by Eli Goldratt is incredible. Not a lot of people know about this, but it's an old manufacturing book that was written as a story about a man trying to save a struggling marriage. I think it was written in the 80s or 90s. And I think of literally every business problem through the lens that he provided me. I hear a lot of people that make a lot of money use terminology ripped directly from that book. So I'll bet you it's most people's secret weapon.
It's called The Goal or The Gold?
The Goal by Eli Goldratt.
Okay.
And then Lean Startup. It's pretty big for me as well. Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect. I don't think it's winning any awards for groundbreaking discoveries, but it was huge for me as well. Yeah, I would say those are probably the 80-20 there.
Awesome. And then final question, if you had to get to, say, 5K MRR in the quickest amount of time doing some sort of AI automations business, what would you do?
Yeah, I would sell cold email systems using cold email. But I would also create an Upwork profile, and then I would religiously send 10 to 15 Looms a day on general custom projects as well. I think that combination will probably yield anybody that's consistent their first client in 3 or 4 days, let alone weeks. And I see that happen literally every day in Maker School. Quickest win was within, I think, 4 hours of starting.
4 hours landing their very first customer with no technical experience or anything.
And it was pretty big too. I think it was a few $1,000s.
Amazing. Nick, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on. I guess last thing, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, check me out on Nick Saraev on YouTube. I also have Nick_Saraev on Instagram. And if you guys like this sort of thing and you guys want to pursue an AI or automation related business model, give Maker School a try. Quickest, straightest line path to your first automation customer in 90 days. And if you don't get one, I will fully refund you.